Hi, I thought I would tape a video for you guys on number 9 on the quiz review. I really feel like this is a problem that you guys can do on your own, but wanted to tape one so that you would have some resources at home. So the first thing that I'm looking at this polynomial, and it asks me to solve for x, and I can see that every single term has an x value. It also can be divided by 2. So I can factor out a 2x. Now, some of you did the problem where you didn't factor out a 2, and that's fine. We will still get the same answer in the end. So if I factor out a 2, I'm left with x cubed minus 9x squared plus 28x minus 30. So at this point, it is an x cubed problem, so I use my calculator to try to figure out a root. And so when I do that and plug it into a calculator, I find out that y is equal to 0 at x is equal to 3. So x is equal to 3 is going to be one of my roots. So I'm going to use 3 and do synthetic division. So my first coefficient is 1, my second one is -9, 28, and -30. So my first thing, I'm going to bring down the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. I'm going to multiply by -6 times positive 3, which is -18. I have 10. 3 times 10 is 30. And my remainder is 0. So things are looking good. And I know that if I am factoring out, so far I'm going to factor out a 2x, and I'm going to factor out an x minus 3. And then my polynomial that I have left is going to be x squared minus 6x plus 10. So at this point, I can try to use the x factor, but when I try to use the x factor here, I have 10 up here, and I want factors of 10 that would add up to be -6, and it doesn't happen. So at this point, I think, okay, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. And we talked about this in class today. So the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. So from my quadratic that I am factoring out, I can see that a is equal to 1, b is equal to -6, and c is equal to positive 10. So at this point, I just plug in my values. So I have 6 plus or minus 36 minus 4 times a times c, which is 10, divided by 2 times 1. So simplifying, I have 6 plus or minus 36 minus 40 divided by 2. And whenever I simplify this even further, it's going to be 6 plus or minus the square root of -4 divided by 2. And at this point, I can see that I have a -1 under the radical, and I also have a 4, which is a perfect square. So at this point, I keep the 6 plus or minus. I factor out a -1, and that is I. I take the square root of 4, and that is 2, and I'm still dividing by 2. So I can simplify from here. I can divide everything by 2. So that would be 1, 3, and 1. So I'm left with 3 plus or minus I. So this tells me that x can equal, at this point, 3 plus I, or x can equal 3 minus I. So those are my other two roots besides the ones I already found up top that would make up my 4 possible roots for this equation, or polynomial. So when listing my roots, I say x is equal to 0, because I set 2x equal to 0 and solve for x. And x is equal to 3, because x minus 3 equal to 0 is 3. And also, x can be equal to 3 plus I and 3 minus I. And this is the situation where I have 2 real rational roots, and I have 2 imaginary roots. So this will kind of help you, I think, be successful on your quiz tomorrow.